To this next episode where we're talking about pre-production and the pre-production process. We've got this idea for a sitcom, and we want to talk about some of the characters that are involved in this sitcom. Now, regarding this sitcom, as we've talked about in a previous video, this is a sitcom that kind of models the mockumentary style of The Office, or some of the other sitcoms that have been around for quite a while and have been quite successful. This one we've decided to call University, and it follows people in a university department who have their weird quirks and characteristics. And of course, it leads to just zaniness and funny and humor and so forth. What we got to do right now is we need to figure out who our characters are and what their character traits are. And the process that we use to do that is through developing character sketches. And a character sketch really is a model for a character. It tells us what that character looks like. It talks about how that character thinks, how that character acts and their behaviors. It talks about their physical appearance. It talks about how they respond to certain details that are around them, things like that. It essentially models who that character is so that as we write these episodes, particularly the pilot episode, which may prove to be the most challenging episode to write, we want to know how characters will respond under certain conditions and how those dialogues will interact with other characters, how they'll use dialogue to interact with other characters. Sometimes that may be with actual dialogue, and other times that might be with body language and facial expressions, things like that. So let me give you an example here. What I have here is I have a character. This is Dr. Theodore Bundy. And this one is a little bit of a play on words because back in the 70s, there was a serial killer named Ted Bundy. And if you don't know who that is, you can certainly look that up on Google. There's probably a Wikipedia article. I think there even has been some Netflix stuff going on that have talked about who this guy was and what he was able to get away with. Really a terrible guy. And certainly we don't want to model after him because that guy was a total jerk, but that's the way it goes. But this guy, Theodore Bundy, we have discussed it and have thought maybe he was from out of the country. Don't know exactly what his nationality is just yet. We're still working through that. But we're thinking maybe he's been out of the country, out of touch, and doesn't really know who Ted Bundy was. Also, as you can see, he's age 32, which if we're to trace that back, it means he wasn't even alive, nor was he even a child when Ted Bundy was out doing what Ted Bundy did. And so this Theodore Bundy, he's a doctor, right? He's got his PhD. We don't know exactly where he's got his PhD or how he got it. We still need to develop that. But if we're to read this character sketch, we can learn a lot about how this character works. It says Dr. Bundy is always telling people that he knows that his name is the same as a serial killer, but he refuses to change it. So it just seems like he's come to this country, he recognizes, he's understood, he's learned that there is this guy Ted Bundy, but he refuses to change it. We're not exactly sure why. Maybe that's because that's the kind of guy he is. He likes to have something to talk about. That's probably the case. As we continue, he's a simple man who's just looking to work hard for success. He wants to find the right girl, but is not sure what that girl is, and we can develop that a little bit further. He's young, too young to know about his namesake. He's quite charismatic, shares many of the same character traits as the serial killer. He's thin and neat. He's always well-dressed, clean-shaven, wears cologne because he thinks it attracts sexy girls. He's not afraid to date women of any age, but he's especially likes those that are younger than him. He gets along well with his coworkers. He knows when he needs to turn on the charm, and he knows when he needs to fight for what he really wants. He always seems to get away with innuendo because he knows how to use just enough to prove a point, but not enough to get him in trouble. So you can see very, very simple at this point. And I can tell you, developing a simple character sketch helps a lot. It helps you to really get in the mind of who these characters are. And as you start to develop how you're going to work through the continued development of these characters, this becomes a basis for being able to do that. Now, this, as you can see, is just a handful of sentences, but we learn a lot about who this character is. I would invite you to write a more detailed character sketch, even a one-page or two-page character sketch that gives us how this person thinks, how they dress, how they talk, how they respond to people, more of their backstory. Are they divorced? Are they, are they the kind of people that get into trouble? Have they been in trouble with the law? Things like that helps us really understand how this person will respond under certain conditions. To give you another example, if I move here, this is our young character. This would be like our TA And this we still haven't figured out what the name of our university is going to be, so we just called it Laughing House State University. Who knows? But we've got this guy, Dave Brooks. He's 27 years old, which is kind of old for a college student. If we read it, it says Dave has been a student at Laughing House State University for 7 years. He's changed majors over and over again. He knows the professors really well because he's had multiple classes from each of them. Now he is their TA. He was hired by the department, and they can't get rid of him as long as he keeps staying in the program, which is his call. That's what he wants to do. He knows all the ins and outs of the system and uses this to exploit the situation to his advantage. He never gets caught, which is good because he would be kicked out of school and lose everything if he was. So this is kind of like the lifetime student, loves the ability just to do whatever he wants. Probably the kind of guy that's living off student loans and just knows that he can continue to mooch off of other people just to say, hey, I'm still going to school. I haven't found what I'm looking for yet, still working through it. Seems to know how to kind of balk at the system and mistreat the system so that he gets what he wants. And you can see as we read this, as you've heard me read it as well as you read it with me, we really get an idea of what this guy's all about. And I think you can see how he would respond, how he would interact, how he would talk. Again, just a short character sketch. Last one we'll talk about. I've got a few others, which I'll give to you so that you can use them to your heart's delight. But the next one is this guy, Dr. C. Everett Kilroy. He's 29 years old, so he's young. He's a distinguished professor. He likes to do things correctly, thinks very highly of himself. He's well-dressed, he's thin, he's good-looking. He's the epitome of conceitedness, loves himself, of course, right? He's been working at the university for many years, doesn't like change. All the students and some of the faculty call him Killjoy. Now, this show's 29. It's funny because as we start to develop this, you can probably get that this age is all wrong, isn't it? Even as we develop this character, and this is something that helps you even before you've written a single line of dialogue or any bit of script, we can start to realize what these characters are all about so that we know how they can interact with each other. And as we see this description, that age is all wrong. We're probably looking at someone who's more like 59, or at least in his 50s, possibly even older than that. Someone who's going to be old, right? Someone who's established, someone who has an opportunity to have things just the way they want. Maybe you've had a college professor like that, a person who just wants to be just the way they are, and that's all there is to it. So these character sketches give you an idea of who these characters are, and before you write a single line of script, you'll want to develop these character sketches. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I'm happy to answer anything to your heart's delight.